Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Burke County Commissioners Recess Meeting for August 24th, 2021. Madam Clerk, looks like we have our County Finance Officer in attendance, our County Attorney, our County Manager, and all 5 Commissioners here today. I will be moderating the meeting today. Our chairman has had a fun trip to the dentist today, so he'd asked me to fill in the blanks. So hopefully he is feeling better. I would remind everyone, please silence your mobile devices, and if you do come to the podium, please activate the microphone before speaking, please. That being said, gentlemen, item number 2, approval of the agenda that was previously submitted for your review. We have a motion to approve the agenda as submitted. All those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, Madam Clerk. Moving on to item number 3, we do have several items for decision today. The first item being Community Developed Zoning Map Amendment ZMA 2021-09, presented by Shane Prisby, our Interim Planning Director. Hey, Shane.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see y'all, and good to be here and present this item. Burke County Community Development Department has received a request from Mary Gibbs to rezone an 8.48 acre parcel from its current zoning of residential R2 to General Business District, or GB. We held the public hearing at the regular meeting last week. Susan Lale, who is one of the owners of the property, spoke at that. We have received 2 emails that were opposing the rezoning, which you all have been provided. Those folks did not choose to come and speak at the public hearing during the time. And the vote was held off until this meeting to help answer a few additional questions prior to having the full board to vote on it. Commissioner Taylor raised some questions about the right-of-way concerns from the Arnett property, and the Arnetts are the property in the middle of the triangle that composes the 3 lots. So the Gibbs property, Gibbs et al., who own that, their lot, as you can see here, I'm saying it's shaped kind of like a big piece of candy corn with 3 pieces. So the base there is the property in question here for the rezoning. And then there are 2 houses that are behind that property, access a road. Their access is through a road through the Gibbs property that comes to and connects through both lots. The Arnetts are the ones who sent in the letter with concerns, including the right-of-way concern for the property. So at the time, I was not able to locate any right-of-way documents prior to the meeting last week. And Commissioner Taylor had some concerns about what their access would be if this parcel became general business or changed hands or anything like that. Susan Lane, one of the owners, was able to provide me with several documents that show right-of-ways attached to their parcel, as well as a survey that was done showing the road, and that was provided to you all for this meeting as well. Through my understanding of what I've been able to read in those documents, it appears that in 1990, what is now the Setzer property, which is the top of the candy corn all the way in the back, that one received right-of-way from the Gibbs property and all the signatories on that to use the existing road that comes through the property. In 1992, both parcels behind the Gibbs property received right-of-way from Crescent Resources and I believe Burke Properties Incorporated, which is the gas station. Since then, Crescent has sold the land partly to Wildlife Resource Commission and then to another property owner, but that would carry with the land as well. So it appears that in the Arnett situation, they certainly do have legal access to their property and permanent access, but there is a question of whether or not they would have a right of access to use the existing driveway that comes onto the Gibbs parcel. I did speak with Kimberly Arnett, who was one of the people in question who is against the rezoning, had questions, spoke with her about that, see if she had any additional documentation. She did not. I spoke with Mary Gibbs and Susan Lale and some other folks who are owners of the property, explained them the situation, my understanding of it as well, and they are looking into it with their attorney to figure out how they can sort that out. That will be a civil matter. That will be something that they just need to figure out, document. They would not be able to remove the existing road nor block it, so functionally the Ordinance would have access through it, but it would be good for everybody to eventually memorialize that legally in a documentation that could be recorded. That's a civil matter that they're going to work out on their end. Just a reminder that we're not able to do conditional rezonings anymore with the North Carolina 160D laws, so that cannot be considered a condition of this rezoning. But I hope that's satisfactory answer to your question, Commissioner Taylor, and I'd be happy to answer any other additional questions you may have about this parcel.
Well, I did ask one by email to our county attorney. It's mainly because I didn't know the difference, and when I Googled it on the internet, it didn't help me make the difference. But anyhow, I did ask JR to look up because it does have in your information a deed of easement. And my question to JR is, what's the difference between a deed of easement and a right-of-way easement? So, and in my own mind, I had already concluded that a deed of easement probably carries a little more weight, but I don't know if it's enough to make a difference or not. So, JR, did you find that information for us?
Well, an easement, Mr. Taylor, is the right of one landholder to have some use of the land of another. A right-of-way is a subset of an easement. It's a specific easement to allow the crossing over of another's property at a certain point. So you can have easements of view shed, you can have easements for utilities, you can have easements for ingress and egress, but a right-of-way is a specific easement to allow the passage over another's property. Now, whether it's going to be a deed of easement or a deed of right-of-way versus an easement agreement or a right-of-way agreement, usually, technically, comes down to whether or not the party who is granting the easement expects some sort of obligation on the other party. So a deed of easement would simply say you have the right to travel here. An easement agreement would say you have the right to travel here, and also you have to keep maintaining the road along with me, or you have to you can't cut down any of my shrubs that might be where you want to travel, things like that. So if there's no obligations being placed on the recipient of the easement, then it's usually just called a deed of easement. But quite frankly, these days, lawyers substitute one for the other. So there are exceptions that prove the rule, but usually a deed of easement will be a document that's signed only by the grantor, only by the person that's giving the easement, and a right-of-way agreement or an easement agreement will be signed by both the grantor and the grantee, acknowledging some obligation on the part of the grantee.
So in your opinion, does either one have more weight than the other? Not that it's going to make any difference in this case, but just...
No, they're used interchangeably. Just if you're the recipient of a deed of easement, then you don't have any obligations attached to your right to use the.
So if you attempt to block your neighbor out from reaching a road, both sides of that could be legally attested. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Well, the reason I asked that fellow board members, is a statement that was made on page 31 by the Arnett letter. Says that 5 out of 7 days they have asked to have cars moved so they can get in and out of the driveway. And that seemed a little high for me, but I asked most of my questions last week, as most of you know. And from my own conclusion, Shane told us you get 14 building lots in there out of 8 acres, which means you're down to about a half acre a lot or less. But we don't have anybody wanting to build lots. We have somebody wanting to develop into business. So from that standpoint, I don't see any reason that would cause me to vote no on the rezoning of it. So, and that's my conclusion.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. Is there any other questions or comments for Shane? Shane, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chairman.
At this point, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make the consistency statement rezoning the 8.4 acres property from residential 2 R2 to general business GB district would be appropriate because the property fronts on U.S. Highway route where new commercial development would be expected. Another commercial development at this location could support of the existing residential development within the area.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. Everybody's heard the motion. Oh, and Commissioner Taylor, yeah, the top of that needs to be read as well. The top part of that motion, please, sir.
Oh, okay. Consistent statement rezoning the 8.8.
Is to adopt an ordinance.
Oh, did you change it on? To adopt an ordinance number 2021-16, amending the Burke County zoning map as it relates to ZMA 2021-09, and the following consistent statement, which I just read.
Okay, thank you. Now I think we've got it all legal, don't we, Madam Clerk? Thank you so much. So everybody's heard the motion. All those in favor of the motion state by the uplifted hand. Those opposed? Motion carried 4-1, Madam Clerk. Thank you. Moving on to item number 2, the ARPA grant projects discussion and adoption of project ordinance presented by Margaret Pierce, our Deputy County Manager and Finance Director. Hey, Margaret.
Good afternoon. I thought this might be a little simpler. Maybe not. What we have before you is the American Rescue Plan Grant Project Ordinance. This ordinance is required before we can start on any of our projects. We have been working with departments to get us information that they feel would be projects that fit under this. The funds have to be used in the following categories of expenditure to the extent they're authorized by state law. The first is support public health expenditures by funding COVID-19 mitigation efforts, medical expenses, behavioral health care, and certain public health and safety staff. The second is to address negative economic impacts caused by the public health emergency, including economic harms to workers, households, small businesses, impacted industries, and the public sector. The third is to replace lost public sector revenue using this fund to provide government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue experienced due to the pandemic. The fourth is to provide premium pay for essential workers, offering additional support to those who have borne and will bear the greatest health risk because of their service in critical infrastructure sectors. And the fifth, invest in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure, making necessary investments to improve access to clean drinking water, support vital wastewater and stormwater infrastructure, and to expand access to broadband internet. we have given you the project ordinance broken into two categories. The first is public health projects, $11,575,650, and $6 million for water sewer projects under Category 5. This is a starting point. This is a way that we can get started on the projects that we know will be approved, eligible for this funding, and may take a little bit of time to complete. It's in no means a full list of the things we feel can be addressed under these funds. And so what we are asking is your input on possible other projects that we can start evaluating the eligibility of and need within the, prioritizing within the categories and see how we can do those. And then approval of the grant project ordinance. Where do you want to start?
Gentlemen? Or Margaret, any questions, comments? Jeff?
Mr. Vice Chair, Margaret, I'm a little bit concerned under Section 2 that it seems like we're appropriating all of the monies in these two categories, and I feel like it's maybe too early to do that. I think we've got other things that, at least that I've been thinking about, and would like to consider for categories 2 and 3 and others. And it seems like we're restricting ourselves only to 1 and 5 with the way this is written. I'm wondering if we don't either just not put Section 2 in there at this point, or open those categories up with some monies in there, or give me your comment on that.
So as we proceed through the next 6 years, because we have 3 years to either spend or obligate the funds, and 3 more years until December of '26 to finish everything. We know there'll be changes to this grant ordinance. This was just a place to kind of start. It's not, we can easily go back and amend the grant project ordinance to add other categories. We just tried to pick a place to start from with what we knew about different things that departments had brought forward, that the manager and I had looked at to try to get an idea of how to start, particularly with some of the things like HVAC projects and the water sewer projects. Some of those changes will take a couple of years to facilitate. So we just wanted to try to get started with them and then get your ideas today about those other categories or other projects you wanted us to look at. We still don't have the final rules. We are still waiting on determination on what ultimately will be eligible and what won't, but they've given us some good framework for some certain things under this. For example, broadband right now is still not eligible under state law, but there are things at the legislature that they're looking at to open that up for us. So if that changes, we would definitely look again at that category, which is under 5, I realize. The things under 2 and 3, well, 3 we're not eligible for. They gave us the formula. It doesn't work. We did not lose revenue based on those guidelines. So 3 is not going to be ever eligible. 4 and 2, if there's changes there, what we would do is just go back and do a grant project amendment to this and bring it back to you to change those categories. We can put funds under them today if you would prefer, or we can wait until we know what we're going to do under those to come back and amend it.
It would make me feel a little better if we went ahead and put some funds in 2 and 4. I just feel like we're telling our partners in the community, well, we're just writing you off by, even though I know you're saying we could change it at any time, but it would just make me feel a little bit better if we said, well,
Okay.
maybe we put $1 million in 2 and 4 just at this point, and then figure out what we can do from there. That's just my opinion.
Are you thinking under $1 million under 4 and 2, $1 million under each?
Yeah, just to openly leave the door open,
Okay.
even though I understand this is a moving target.
That's fine, just, okay. And we would reduce the public health category, that $2 million. And again, the list I gave you, I think, is in the neighborhood of $6 million for the public health area anyhow. So we only had ideas, even estimating, and that's just rough estimates. It's not even final estimates. We'd have to get bids and quotes and things on some of these. So we were just trying to give a starting point to go ahead with some of the things. As you recall from Eckerd Creek, it takes about a year to do a water sewer station, and those are going to be eligible, and we do want to upgrade our water sewer stations. So Mr. Delahunt is chomping at the bit to go ahead and start getting some contractors bidding and quoting on those projects, and we've explained to him until you guys endorse a grant project ordinance, we can't do that quite yet. So we were just trying to get started.
Mr. Chairman, I had bunches of questions. I erased about half of them because if you go to the next couple of pages, it explains a lot what they plan to do. And actually, Margaret, with all that money and very little directive in somewhat manner, it's really pretty good. But a couple of things, I was like Jeff, and one of the things that, one of the questions I had was about item 1 and behavioral health, because I read in one of the articles that they were going to get a ton of money. And, you know, we won't know as a Board of Commissioners how much these entities are getting till we get further into this program.
That's right.
It makes it very difficult to say to A, B, C, D, E, here's what you get, and all that. So you'll understand one of my only really recommendations. And some of these things, like if you need money or not, you still get it. And I don't think we ought to do that. And I don't think the citizens of Burke County expects us to do that. In item 3, for example, I put public sector revenue. Who are they and what formula will be used? And that what formula that probably nobody has yet. But the fact is that we need a fair formula, easy to understand for all the citizens. And some of these things, I'm going to group 3 questions right here at one.
Okay.
Because the average citizen could look at you, point their finger at you and say, you're playing favoritisms. You know, you're isolating people who got paid more during the whole process, and yet they're going to be paid another lump sum somewhere along the way. Item 5 is the one I like the best, but item 5 also mentions broadband support, and that's one of the suggestions I was going to make before I read the rest of the program as it went along. If we don't get if broadband don't get their big lump sum of money, which has been promised, then we need to be flexible to move some that we can do. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure everybody underlined is don't forget who we serve, and it's not just government employees. We serve the entire citizenship of Burke County. And if we're not careful, we will be accused quickly of not being fair and equitable to everybody. Basically 2 things, and I think you've already hit on that since you made your presentation, that I would say to this board, let's keep this budget somewhat flexible. Reserve the right to move budget items if the government supplements and puts more money than they really need or we don't have to participate in. And I'm sure some of them are going to come with even what percentage we will have to use of ours to participate. And I think we'd do a little better and be more fair to look at the benefits it would do the citizens. And some of these items, looking down the line, really won't help the citizen 1 cent, the average citizen in Burke County. Some of the items will help them long-term as secondary. If you got a better, faster emergency vehicle, you get to the scene a minute and a half earlier, you might save a life. But other things would not be near as beneficial. And the other thing I was going to suggest is, and I would have loved to have had at least an hour and a half meeting discussing this before we even got to this point, but to stay in step and be able to respond to people who ask questions. It would be nice if this board had every 6 months, 9 months, whatever we feel like it would take, and have a thorough hour, 2-hour work session on this money alone. And the other question I didn't ask, I had up front, we received about 50% of the money, and at what date and time will we get the remainder? And I understand, Margaret, that we got the whole 17,000 in this year's budget. And if we're not, 17,000 million, excuse me. And wouldn't it be wiser to split that if we're not going to get the rest of it till next year?
I'll start at the end and go back to the beginning. Okay, so you want to budget the whole amount regardless of when we get funded. Most grants, we actually get the money at the end. This time they gave us half the money up, and the other half has to come within 12 months of the date of the first. So within 12 months from June 12th, I believe is the date we got it, we have to get the second half, is what the feds have told us.
Next year.
So we should have the other 7 million by June of 22.
Right.
Okay. We budgeted the whole amount just to have, because at that point in time, in June, they were telling us what we needed was to make sure we budgeted it. They came back later and told us we had to have this grant project ordinance before we could go forward. So that's why you've got the two at different times. Your first question on the formula. The formula is approximately, Scott, am I correct? It's about 5 pages? Yeah. So the formula goes over roughly 5 pages of information that you input. You basically have to go calendar year wise, quarter by quarter, for 2019 and 2020, everything 2021 to date. You're looking to see from current, including growth factors, how are you doing versus calendar year 2019. Our sales tax is up, our property tax is up. We have other service amounts that are up, particularly like with some health department things. So you had to show that you were at a percentage below your 2019 numbers to prove you could show lost revenue. We can't show we lost revenue because of our sales tax growth and other things. So that's why we won't qualify for that revenue replacement. It's looking at all of our government revenues as a whole. So we were hoping it would look specifically at things like Foothills, where we've not been able to rent the conference center and perhaps recoup that revenue. But because our other revenues replaced it, we aren't eligible to file anything under that category. And it won't change. Once you do the formula and you figure out that you're not eligible, that category's out for you. He spent several days trying to go through all the information, calculate that to see where we land on that one. You were asking about behavioral health. I think that's one reason why we're not trying to allocate $17 million is to keep that door open, particularly as the rules change. Although the feds have assured us when we get this final ruling, they'll not change a thing, I may not believe that. My experience over the years has been they will be back with a change. So we wanted to keep that door open. Also, we're talking over a significant period of time, 3 years to decide how to get this money spent. A lot can change in 3 years. A lot changed in the last 16 months. So we definitely wanted to leave money unallocated for those possible changes, for those potentials. That's why this is kind of a vague list. It's just an idea to start throwing some darts at the wall on things that we don't have specifics on. We did discuss behavioral health and whether that would be, that's certainly going to be a need through this. I think that's been identified that mental health has suffered through the isolation we put people through and the changes in the mask and the no school and socialization for children. Whether that's something we can work with partners as we have time to figure out what they're getting funded for, what they may have a gap in services that we could help address for our citizens. That's one of those things we want to come back and look at, and hopefully if there's an opportunity, come to you and say, this is a program we could partner with them. They did not get funding. Can we do this? So we recognize that one for sure within this process. As it stands right now, broadband is not something we're allowed to spend funds on because of state law. The feds say it's fine. This is a case where state law overrules federal. Normally you go to the top, and if they're okay, not. But if you followed the information, I think Commissioner Carswell has sent us some things that the legislature's got out there. They are trying to change that so that we could invest in broadband. And then we would be back to talk about what does that look like, what does it mean, how does it go forward. But right now, we're not eligible to spend that. The different documents, I probably should have told you this. So there is the initial rules they gave us, which is 151 pages. They have a frequently asked question document that they update periodically and randomly as they get enough questions. These are federal documents. That one is up to about 47 pages. It can be updated twice a week. Sometimes it'll be 2 weeks before they update it. But they are good enough to put the date they change the answer to a question in there, or they expand on an answer. They have almost weekly, it's generally about every 10 days, they'll do an hour-long webinar to give us more information. They come out with, we have, for the water and sewer projects, they have referenced the drinking water state revolving trust funds and the clean water state revolving trust funds. If a project's eligible under those, it should be eligible under these funds. The one thing they've stressed to us at the state webinars we've done and the federal webinars and the school government webinars is there is no authority that will tell us yes or no on a project. We have to read all of these things and come up with our own decision about whether it qualifies or not. So we're trying really hard to make sure we review everything we can and try to fit a project under if it's eligible. And that's the thing. We'll continue looking as all that information changes. There may be some of these that right now we think don't fit that guideline, that we may find authoritative information that it does change. Trey McGee with REC actually was on a call, I believe, Monday. Today's Tuesday. Yesterday, he sent me a link to a Zoom call he was on with state REC directors, and I'm going to go back when I get a chance and listen to that hour-long call to see if there's something else about the REAP lights that might make them eligible. Right now, you would have to show that it's in a specific type of census qualified tract, and you would have to show that you are addressing, what is the word? A certain segment of our citizens. Apologize, the word escapes me at the moment, but you have to prove all these factors to show that that would be an eligible project. It's a bit more restrictive in a lot of ways than the CARES Act funds, and yet more open. CARES Act funds would have never allowed us to do these water sewer improvements. Anything that will make sure we're not dumping wastewater into streams, that will help keep that from happening, anything that will improve the quality of our water lines themselves is eligible. But Friday afternoon, I got word that we found that the fire hydrant replacements we wanted to do will not be eligible under these funds. We are still moving forward with that. That's where we talked about at budget, that if we try to put stuff under here, we're going to go back and see if there's a way to do it under our regular funding. So don't want anybody to hear fire hydrants and think they're not happening. They are happening. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but it's a lot of different moving parts you're having to put together with the state and the feds both telling us on every call, they will not, you can't send them a list of projects and they'll say, yes, you're good to go. We have to make that decision ourselves. So we're trying to review everything we can We will have to report these funds as what have they done. We'll have to basically do performance measures on them. So we have to go back and be able to show all that. And as we look toward how to work with our local businesses and citizens under categories 2, there is a significant amount of reporting and very limited qualifications. So we've read through all of that, and that is something that I think going forward we want to figure out if there's things you want us to really specifically try to fit under those or look at under those guidelines, but there are other funds coming to help those as well. So we want to make sure of that too, and we're such early days that it's still hard to put a lot of the moving parts together. We're just kind of wanting to get the grant project ordinance in place and move forward on some that we feel pretty confident about. The building renovations at the health department, we have put that in there with an estimated dollar amount, but there's nothing to that. We know things need done at the health department, but it might be $50,000. It might be blow up the building as the new director has requested and get him a new one. $3 million isn't going to cover a new building. I couldn't do that with $17 million. But we are going to look at what can we do to make things work under that, whatever that amount is. And of course, anything over $90,000 is going to come back to you anyhow for specifics on these. We're not looking to move forward buying things tomorrow necessarily. We're looking just to try to get started with the little things and the bidding on some of these.
Well, there's a lot of other questions on here that it'd be redundant to ask now. For example, hands-free water coolers. There's no numbers for all the public buildings, or is it for half or whatever? You don't need to answer that because that can come later, and that's the reason I strongly recommend that we stay very flexible, but more than anything, really informed and kept informed of how this money is being expended. And, another question I had, I raised it, whole body security scanner no, not that one. Which one was it? It was 20,000. Oh, temperature scanner for jail. I bet there ain't no hospital in the county that's got a temperature scanner that costs $20,000. But don't need to answer that now.
Okay.
I'm just saying, as we go, and I don't know if monthly is probably too often, but I certainly would like to get at least quarterly. Here's what we started, here's what's been spent, here's what we spent the last 2-3 months, and this is where we are. Just to keep abreast of what's going on with that project.
One of the things you'll see in the list is a request from Rhonda Lee and I that we've talked about, this time-limited position to manage the reporting and overseeing. The first report was 10 pages that I've already had to do. We haven't spent a penny. They'll get more complex as we spend money, and as I said, we will actually be having to evaluate if we buy that temperature scanner, how was it used? How many people went through it? What was the effects? How did it benefit the citizens? How did it benefit staff? We have to document everything about these. So and she has new Osha reporting. Because they came out with new guidance and she's having to do significant reporting out already. We're hoping that the board will approve a time-limited position which can be paid for through this grant to help us with this reporting and things. Similar to the contractor we hired last time, but this would be, because it can be up to 6 years, we would want this to be a county employee so that we can manage them and they can help us do these reports. Because it's going to be a tremendous amount of documentation that the federal government is going to require and that we want to provide to you as well, not just dry numbers, but more information about it. So we hope that when we bring back a job description and a pay grade, that we can perhaps get your approval for such a position to help us with all of this documentation.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
I guess, when I look at this, the first four words under number one, support public health expenditures, which I think falls in line with 5, invest in water and sewer. Of course, broadband's there too, but the majority of the calls I've got over the last 20 years have been on fresh water. And we got people buying bottled water. They buy the tons of bottled water in this county because we haven't provided good, clean water for all our citizens. And to me, that item 5, invest in water and sewer, is probably the most important thing to me, is to help these people get water they can drink out of the tap.
Well, and Mr. Delahunt sent me a revised list earlier today. Of course, his packet was already out. He's pretty much doubled his requests for things for us to look at. So we've got to go back through his newest list and see how many of those would fit eligibility. Then they'll come to you for actual approval. We won't proceed necessarily with a water line replacement because that's massive. That's over $90,000. We'll be back with the specifics on them. Putting in new water lines under these funds, again, will have some restrictions. And unfortunately, I'm not sure 17 million would put in all the water lines we need. They're so expensive, but we're definitely looking at what can we do to help everyone.
But to me, it's almost a sin that we do not furnish clean water to our citizens. I mean, that's just, I don't know how a county can stand up and be proud of themselves when our citizens are drinking water that's not fit for an animal.
Mr. Chairman, I will kind of echo, I had that on my list, I took it off. I don't know how many years I have requested a formula for a petition or whatever system we need to go through for people to get on county water. We probably have enough requests out there if we had them on them, but I know it'd be expensive. We could break even on the water stuff. We've done nothing for water in 8 years. We did do the one project across the river, which was mainly from a grant, and it was set to help 8 or 10 people, but we ended up with, Brian, what, at about 40 new customers on that construction across the river.
Was this going down, was it 18 South?
Yeah, it was Highway 18, and
Yeah, I'm thinking it's the 30 to 40 range, maybe more, because they had to go back and reevaluate some people. But Johnny, what you're thinking?
I think it wound up being in the neighborhood of 80-some new residents down there have water and more signing on.
Margaret, you mentioned the $90,000. Do we need this ordinance somewhere to say specifically that this board will approve the items, or where's that $90,000 at?
That's your contract limit to come back to you. That's already out there in our regular budget ordinance.
Do we need something here? I think what I'm hearing the board say is, we'd like to know how these monies are spent before they're spent.
Okay.
What do we need to put in here? And maybe this is a JR question. At what point as we go along, and I know it's going to be a long process, and we'll probably be dealing with this quarterly or, whatever, but I think that probably needs to be in the ordinance so that our expectation is that, we'll have opportunity to know what's happening and when.
So Section 5 says that we'll report on a quarterly basis. So you would receive already it's in there about doing the quarterly report.
I guess I'd like to see something in regard to the board will see in advance and have some kind of approval at some point. There may be some limit we don't want to see, I don't know, but JR, thoughts?
Well, you could have a provision that would state that before actual funds are spent or contracts are entered into, that it will come back before the board. And that might give you what you're looking for.
Dare I add that wording under section 4? Is that what you're thinking?
Right.
Mr. Chairman, would you allow me one more question? Margaret, if we approve this as it's written, are you telling me it's in stone and we cannot change anything?
No, sir. I'm telling you it's changeable. I'm telling you that at any meeting, we can do a change to it. It's basically another budget kind of to this. It was just an extra layer that the state local government commission requested we put in place.
So we're just really giving you guideposts today and setting the basic
Endorsing
first
the-
parameters. And like you mentioned, and Jeff mentioned the 90,000, we can make that randomly 25,000, whatever it is, what's too small for it to come before the board. And that's probably another conversation we need to have at a later date. But I do like the language where we do see it beforehand and not speed through the process, because this is a one-shot deal. Mr. Carter?
I want to make sure I understood you to say that we really need to do some bidding now, put out for bids. Did you say that?
We would like to go ahead and at least get some bids so we can bring back to you for specific, because what we're already hearing is the contractors, because just like what happened with the CARES Act money, the same contractors are getting hit from every entity. All of the municipalities received their funds from the state. We received ours from the federal government. So we have a little bit of a leg, because actually they're not getting theirs for another month or two. We were trying to kind of get in the front of the line with some of those, such as the HVAC, so that we're not behind. And then the water projects, again, trying to make sure it takes, anywhere from a month to 3 months to get those type of bids put together and the plans drawn and such, to even come back and give you specifics on what it might cost.
Totally understandable, and I think it just really validates what Jeff's wanting to do in paragraph number 4. Is a couple things I want to throw at you to see if it sticks, okay? Monies for building assistance to people coming into Burke County, business assistance. Any way to do that? Check on it, let me know, okay?
I will check on it, but
Okay. Upgrading communication systems in all the county buildings, was that considered?
I don't see any way that's eligible. It's not going to, I don't know of a way to put that under one of the categories, but
Okay.
I will definitely look at it.
All right, any way to do any kinds of grants to volunteer fire departments?
No. I take that back. We can contract with any agency to provide a service, just as we do during our regular budget process, as long as that is a service that we would normally provide. We would do it as a contract, not a grant. It would be a contract with those agencies, similar to what we do now.
I saw some EMS upgrades. Do we need new ambulances? Do we need additional ambulances?
I don't read that ambulances themselves are eligible. I have heard that another local entity is doing new ambulances, so I'm going to continue exploring that. They would like a QRV. The list that's here is 5 pages from EMS. When we put out the call for wish list, this is ventilators, IV pumps, auto pulse, specialized stretchers, a couple of machines, replacement of basically a lot of our equipment that has gotten outdated, and as much as we try to replace a little bit a year, this would catch us up with new equipment. The only downside to that is you place it all at once, so we would stagger this a little bit over the 3-year period. Hemorrhage kits, splint kits, a specialized stretcher car seat for transporting pediatric patients, spine boards, a mobilizer for a pediatric patient, all these different things that we were able to determine. There were some on here that are not. Mattresses and recliners for their buildings don't serve the citizens, so those aren't something we felt were eligible.
Is there any nonprofit that's eligible for a grant?
If they provide a service, such as Burke Recovery, that we contract with currently, and they could provide a service that meets one of these category needs, and we could document everything they do and confirm that they are spending it with those disadvantaged citizens, either economically or socially disadvantaged, we would have to verify that with them. That was what I was talking about. There's a lot of steps we would have to go through in documentation to make sure that whomever we contract with uses the money under the exact same guidelines we would have to. There are circumstances, but the 2 things we've received so far from the public that were sent to us, assisting with renovation on a building doesn't meet that, nor does increasing the pay for an organization of nurses that does not contract with us.
Okay. Going down that same trail, Margaret, excuse me, Johnny,
Go
get in
ahead.
here, just didn't want to lose this train of thought. Going down that same nonprofit trail, I know we've had those couple requests, but in thinking about, all these nonprofits in our community that were not able to raise funds throughout COVID in the same manners that they normally could have raised funds. Is that some area that we can, I know they'd have to provide documentation, all that kind of stuff. I know they have to provide, have to work for it, and we'll have to do the same, but is that an area that, even though we can't fund specific projects, could we look at replacing income that they were not able to raise simply because of what was going on with COVID?
To my knowledge, no, because it's specific that you can only contract with them for those services that we would normally provide. Now, if we can verify that a service they're providing, and you can go back to March 3rd of 2021 for expenditures under this funds, and we could see that they provided some service that DSS does, childcare. They help pay for childcare for a family. Say you had a nonprofit, help pay for childcare, because we are authorized to assist with childcare for underprivileged families or economically challenged families. We could contract with them for those type of payments, and it could be retroactive. You have to show that not just that the organization, not just that they used up their income or weren't able to raise it, we would have to show that we contracted with them to provide a service that we would normally have provided under our authority as a county. I mean, it is a section I've read several times because I understand the need out there, and you hear it all the time. And I've seen the same thing. They weren't able to get out and fundraise. They weren't able to do a lot of their services. So how can we help them? And under that, there is money that's coming from the state directly to DSS and directly to the health department outside of these dollars, that we will be seeing other funding sources coming in. Aging will have some nutrition funds again, we're told. We haven't gotten the specifics on it, but it should continue to help her provide for those additional routes she added and the shelf-stable meals. So that's one reason that's not addressed here, because we know there's another whole pot of money that's going to do that. Sorry. Okay.
Yes,
Communication in county buildings, nonprofits replacing income. What else did you ask me about?
We was talking about ambulances. And
Ambulances.
fire. Of course, we decided not for volunteer fire departments. a lot of money, big dollars here, pump station improvements, et cetera, $4 million. And I'm sure you're going to dig a little deeper in the well and give us more facts so we can see how that's going to go on down the line.
Yes.
But I also wanted to, and we talked about mental health, substance use. I think we already talked about those programs. That's on your list. Any way to provide any funds to general services in any manner, shape, or form?
As far as
What?
repairs, okay,
Yeah.
so the HVAC, you are allowed to
No
improve.
equipment or anything. We can just do those things that are associated with healthcare, right, through general services.
What other things are you thinking about?
Equipment,
Such as a truck?
yeah, anything.
No.
Okay, good.
It talks about specifically that ventilation in buildings, and that's why we want them to go through, we want a cleaned up work at least once, possibly once a year over the 3 years, depending on what that cost comes back at, to make sure that we're as healthy with the air coming back into the buildings. We want them to look at, we're looking at the vents, if our HVAC is old and the unit's not pumping the air right, we're able to replace those. We want to get as much of that done, which alleviates a bit of a burden from the county budget, along with providing a better air quality for citizens in those buildings and the staff.
Now, Margaret,
Mr. Chairman, but didn't we just put new air conditioners in the courthouse?
Certain
Didn't
buildings we
update a
did.
couple somewhere? Surely we're not gonna replace stuff that's been replaced in the last 2 or
Oh.
3 years.
No.
That's the reason, and I'm looking down here, Wayne, you might correct me, building renovation at the health department, it didn't cost that much to build it.
It's just
The question-
ideas of things,
The
right?
question is, would it be better to take the $3 million and invest it in a new one and add 3 of our own or whatever? I don't know. We don't know the answer to those questions because we just don't have them. And hand-free water coolers is a nice idea, but I don't know where they're going, how many. The EMS equipment upgrade you just mentioned, do we get a couple new vehicles within that 700, or where does it go? I think I'm not going to speak for her, I'm just saying for me, I need an explanation, not just a statement that this is what we're going to do in a dollar amount. The building renovations at the health department it needs an explanation for me. Deep cleanings for county buildings, and we pay how much a year for cleaning? And what is the difference between deep cleaning? He surely can't go over any more than what he's going over, is it? What is that?
That was a request made by a department that can we
We don't
have
have to.
certain things like that done. This is why they're just ideas at this point. We haven't even talked to anyone. We just guessed at what a price might be. That's where this is. I just didn't want to overwhelm you with some of the documentation. I have some of it, but it was just kind of to give you an idea of what falls under those categories too. So what I added to this, to maybe edit this if you're comfortable, was under this section 4 in the ordinance. I've written this out, and Mr. Simpson, the finance officer will provide a list of proposed specific expenditures prior to any commitments. Does that help the comfort level?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
The finance officer will provide a list of proposed specific expenditures prior to commitment. We would add that to the ordinance so that you get the specific list as frequently as we need to, whether it would be monthly at each meeting. I think as time goes by, it would be less often, but
probably
as
minimum
needed.
quarterly, I would think.
Well, we may need to proceed faster. If we're not given the leeway to do anything before that's approved, we may need to come each meeting.
And, and I did have a comment on the buildings in renovations.
Mr. Vice Chair, can I,
Go ahead.
let me finish up.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Like him, I can't function. Okay. Couple more things and I'll be through.
Okay.
The governor's proposed to spend a portion of state funds in partnership with us on things that we want to do. Have we heard anything from the governor's office?
Nothing specific yet on what that means. We have only heard that. They are not releasing any guidelines yet. We have no information. Again, that may be something we want to explore when we figure out what it is.
There will be matching dollars. If he signs a budget, there's supposed to be matching dollars to help us. So I want us to be sure that we see what projects that are in his opinion, or whomever's advising him, if he signs a budget, that will assist us in what we do. And secondly, in that budget, he has offered to give $10 million to NCACC to assist counties as they move through this project. So I want us to remember, if he signs the budget and the NCACC gets the $10 million to help the 100 counties, let's make sure that we get our share of help. I noticed you wanted to possibly hire somebody to help do the paperwork and everything, so maybe they have something in place to help also. So please explore that possibility. I know our average sales tax growth for 2021 was at about 10%. You know, it was over 30% in last July, and the projection for 22-23 is about 6.9%. So we're doing well. So I'm hoping when you identify these certain projects, like Commissioner Taylor said, that we get the specifics of how that's going to be spent. It's just like Wayne said, we got a $2 million project to put water down Highway 18 while I was on a committee in Raleigh, but you get kicked off the committee by the governor and you don't get any more money, you know? So I'm with Wayne. Anywhere we can get that water and sewer and do the cleaning, that's great. I'm through. I'm done.
Margaret, we were talking about building upgrades. You know, we're doing a buildings assessment, so we're putting the cart before the horse. I mean,
Right, that's one
you know,
reason, that's
because
just an idea.
until we get the assessment back, I mean, and that may be a year and a half. What's the time frame on that before?
Supposed to be in the spring. We're
It
supposed to
will
have
be
that
in the
back.
spring, so we will have it back in the spring. So
We're
really,
supposed
when
to.
we're talking about HVAC systems and all this, why would we, you know, obviously we're throwing a dart at the board because we're not gonna wanna put $500,000 in a building that they're recommending us get rid of.
No, we've asked them actually to prioritize HVAC and roofs because of leak issues in the last few storms, but the HVAC because of this. We're waiting on their report to know what to do. Just
Okay.
kind of putting that on there, that's something we can look at and are looking
So
at.
we're working hand in hand as they're going through the process with that, and I just wanna make
Yes.
that clear.
Yes, they actually did a kickoff meeting yesterday with all our departments heads to talk about what it's going to mean and what their involvement will be to help us through that process. But we are supposed to have that data, hopefully, supposed to be in time for budget.
One more thought. Is there anything that we have to do to help municipalities out during this? They're on their own, right?
That's
Okay.
correct. That's correct. I have spoken with a couple, and what I've told them is they're welcome to see if we know I'm happy to give my thoughts if I think something's eligible or not and point them to where I saw it. But we can't provide them a consultant like we did last time, and we can't provide them anything other than opinion. They are on their own making their decision.
Are they under the same process as we are about making ordinances and everything?
Yes.
They are.
Yes, they are under all of that, but they will follow through reporting and other rules that the NC Pro office sets, not that the federal government has set for us. Their report may look totally different than ours and may be less, maybe more, because they have to follow the state rules from the North Carolina Pandemic Recovery Office. We have to follow the rules set by the Treasury Office.
Is anything they do going to step on our toes, or are we going to step on their toes and how they spend their monies? Maybe.
Won't know till we know their
Oh,
plans.
no. Okay.
Margaret, just for general information, of course, you may not know yet, but if it's for, I take it we can't, like, if we need a new EMS station, is that gonna be eligible?
I don't see that. It talks the only buildings it talks specifically about is health departments, any kind of health facility. If we assume that's a health facility, yes. Health facilities, renovations, improvements to make access better, larger space is fine.
But if we not only made an EMS station, but also made it a training center, classrooms, that type of thing, you know, I don't know, I just.
It's not going to serve a clinic need. So I would say no on the training because it talks about it has to serve a clinical
Possibly on the
purpose.
EMS station, part of it, possibly.
The EMS station, I don't think so because we've actually wondered about that one. The one it specifically says absolutely not to is courts. We wanted to do some things to expand because of drug court and different things and the way that needs to be spaced out so they will handle their docket. It very specifically tells us we can't spend money on courthouses. So
Even if it's an outdoor courtroom, because I heard
it's,
something down at the NCACC that on one of the counties was looking at doing an outdoor courtroom. And of course, depends on time of year. I don't know how happy the citizens would be about that. But on the other hand, I know that was mentioned. So there's a lot of different interpretation out there that we sat in and some interesting ideas. Obviously, some of them may not.
if that's a temporary structure to get them through the backlog, it's eligible. If it's a permanent change going forward to court space, it's not eligible. So I wonder, being an outdoor space, if that's not
Maybe
a
that's
temporary backlog
And that's their
clearance,
idea.
and that's eligible.
How about affordable housing?
A portable what?
Affordable housing.
Affordable housing, yes. That comes in under 2, under category 2. And actually, the COG has something on it Friday that I'm going to hear and see. That there are restrictions, there are guidelines. We can't build houses. We can assist with getting partners here, similar to what we already look at through BDI. Where that falls and what that means and how you're going to have to track it is something I need more information on.
And that's something I'd love to have clarity on, because that's obviously an important need. And one last question, then I'll ask anybody else got other questions. If, say the second phase of the buildings and trades building out there, when we actually do, besides the classrooms, actually where we go in and build those the housing, is that going to be eligible if we set some monies aside? Because it's been interpreted that from some from the state that would be in that second phase eligible, because we gave considerable amount the first phase. The second phase, I would like to know if we can also set aside maybe that same amount, and to get, because we were able to anchor a lot of money to get the first part of that done. I think we can anchor some other money to get the second part done.
And you're saying because the second phase will be for a training center
Well,
for
not just
affordable
because-
housing?
Well, not really both. And so when you look at that, I would say just kind of look and see what information you need. I can get you any information from the college, but I would like to know if that would be eligible, because that second phase probably will be coming in within that time frame.
I can definitely look at that. I haven't looked
I would
at
just talk to
payments to
Dr. Welch.
education.
Yeah, and he can tell you what that second phase would look like. And
Okay.
that's really all I have right now. Any other questions or comments? I think, Mr. County Manager, you were pulling your mask off earlier, so.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. We are at the start, and I have to wonder, as time goes on and entities have encounters and find out they can do this or they can't do that, if we may see the rules evolve over a period of time, because you just can't foresee everything down the road. And if we're so tied up with strings and things, that they may have to relax those. And so right now we're at the very beginning, and this gets us out of the starting gate. We know that the projects that we're initially talking about are qualified for that and are needed. And again, as time goes on and this evolves, we make the changes that are desired by this board and to the benefit of our citizens. So there's nothing really set in stone. And I remember with the COVID thing, about every 2 weeks, Margaret was getting changes from the state. So I don't know that we won't see that here too. But thank you for your patience. And it's a lot to chew on right now, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. Any other questions or comments for Margaret? You've been You've done a great job. There's a lot of information to try to interpret and a lot of questions from us. Obviously, this is the first stab at it, but
No, that's why we wanted to have this conversation with you. We are absolutely at the very, very beginning. We're not even hardly at the beginning, because what we want to do, if the grant project ordinance is approved, what we'd like to do is start getting some quotes and come back with real numbers. These are all guesstimate numbers, and some of them just kind of placeholder numbers to get an idea. Like the building renovations at the health department, that was just a number. It's not based on anything yet. That's one that probably is a well down the road, well after the study, but also it may not even be part of this. There may be a lot better things or a lot different things. We want to use that money in 30,000 increments for a whole lot of different things instead of this. We're just giving you an idea of some things people have brought to us from departments or things that one of us has received from the community to kind of get started. And then we will come back to you with the specifics and actual quotes to give you an idea of yay or nay under this funding.
thank you. Commissioner Tyler?
Yeah, the thing I think that we're all seeing and realizing and recognizing that this is not in stone, but we would be less than smart, I started to use a bad word, less than smart if we didn't protect you and us and the citizens of Burke County, but putting a phrase in there simply, and I don't care how you phrase it, it's just that if we, as the board, or you as your committee, or organization, something comes up that would benefit this county twice as much as what's already on the list, we deserve to make that switch in that budget.
It's very fluid. You can change it every meeting if you like. We just are looking for a opportunity to get started. The state says we can't do one thing until we have that in place.
Well, and JR might have the best decision on that or best sentence, but, that's the reason I said remain somewhat flexible, that we can switch when it's necessary to do it.
Absolutely.
Or better to do it. So, it protects you as much as it does this board, and it gives us the right to say to the powers that be, we have discovered this need, it's 2 times higher than this one, therefore we're submitting a change for this budget to be put over here. And I think that.
And it may be something that's under the same category, and you wouldn't even have to change that, so.
I want to piggyback on something Commissioner Taylor said, and you've done a tremendous job, okay? We commend you for that. I mean, we opened the door and we give you some things. But as fluid as this is, I really think this board needs to be kept, the communication doors need to be opened. We can't wait from the third Tuesday to the third Tuesday. There's too many people out there asking too many questions. So, Mr. Manager, I don't know if you can get together in some way, do a report to us, just a small report, so that there's no doubt that we can quell any rumor whatsoever, because there's a lot of rumors. I got 2 phone calls last night saying, we need 10,000 for this, and I'm saying, it's not going to happen, so we need to be able to know, and as fluid as this is, I think it's just incumbent upon us. I hate to ask you to do that, but I think it's that important. This is big business, and we need to know. So if we could filter some way that we can get that information out, maybe every 2 weeks, it'd be a great for us.
Okay. One document I might ask the manager to send on to you. The easiest one to read and get information out of at this point is the frequently asked questions. And it's one of the smaller documents. So even though it's about 40 pages, you can kind of hone in. It's done by category, and it talks about different things. Well, and some of it is this eligible, or how does this fit? It will tell you plainly, yes. Some of it's kind of yes or no. A lot of it just gives you mumbo jumbo and 10 other places to look. But some of that is where we're really relying on the guidance of whether it fits or doesn't fit. It gives you examples of things that are good. So it will help, and it may help you when you're addressing questions. So I'll have that one forwarded on to you as often as I know it changes, but again, it can be 3 times a week. So we may decide to send it once a week to you every Friday if it's updated or not, or let you know it's not been updated this week. They went a 3-week period not updating it in July, and I thought they were done. I thought, okay, we're finished. Then they did it 3 times the next week. So it's just been amusing to watch, just like the other funds. But I'll ask that the clerk and manager, I'll get that to you, and we can send you out the latest and greatest on that one that may help give you some more information. There's just so much I hated to, we talked about what to give you, and there's just a lot of stuff, and I hated to bore you with all of it. I feel like that's our problem, to read all the cool stuff that goes in the background of it. So we'll send that one to you that might help.
Do I understand, Mr. Chairman, do I understand we need a vote today?
If we could, please.
And on that motion, it will be to adopt the ordinance 21-18 as amended, and we would need those amendments read to us, please, Madam Clerk.
Timing. Now, what I'm handing out here includes the changes to the new categories, and what Jeff requested. It doesn't include your statement because I already printed this out. So if you guys could see what we want to do with section 4 and make sure I've got the section 2 correct. Margaret, was your statement something like the finance director will provide a list of proposed projects before commitment?
I mean, I think yours meets the same.
Okay. Well, if that works, I've got it all.
If you determine later on to add a dollar amount to that above X dollar amount, that's okay too. But at this point, we're happy to provide all of it to you ahead of time. But that may be that we can come back to even perhaps the September meeting and say, these are things, are you okay? Like some of the EMS equipment, and we'll have actual true quotes for those where we've just done some quick rough numbers on some of this.
Okay. This works for me, Mr. Vice Chair.
Okay.
With the addition of what she's going to do on forward.
It's already there, I think. Kay put something there already.
So you make the motion to adopt 2021-18 as amended?
I will, yes, sir.
You have a motion. All those in favor signal by the uplifted
We're
hand.
not going to state the amendment.
This is there.
It's in there.
Those items we talked about.
She made the changes.
She's made the changes. She added these couple lines in here, then she added this last sentence here to give us approval.
So does that 5-0, Madam Clerk? We need to play that back. All those in favor of the amended ordinance, state by the uplifted hand. Opposed? Motion carried 5-0, Madam Clerk. Margaret, thank you for your patience.
No, sir. Thank you for yours, all of you.
All right, gentlemen, moving on to item number 4, there is a need for closed session, so we will need a motion to go into closed session pursuant to NCGS 143-318.11A3, 4, 5, and 6. We have a motion. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Yes. Gentlemen, does anybody need a break, or are we okay to go straight into closed session?
I believe the clerk needs a break.
Okay, we'll take a 2-minute break, Madam Clerk, or however long you need. Gentlemen, we did make a proper motion to come out of closed session. Well, I was just informing them that we did, and now we're back in open session. And we do need a motion made in open session.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion to approve the purchase of real property. Reads numbers 38040 and 38041, located on Kirksey Drive, and approximately up to $45,000 of general funds. Fund balance for property acquisition is $35,000, soil testing $10,000. Further authorize the chairman or county manager to execute the purchase agreement on behalf of the board.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. All those in favor of Commissioner Taylor's motion, state by the uplifted hand. Those opposed? Motion carried 5-0. Madam Clerk. All right, gentlemen, thank you for your patience today and everybody participating. At this point, all we need is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion?
Who was that? Made that motion?
Mayor.